So I just finished an amazing video with Christy Van, and we were talking about my $389 secret. Yes, it is a secret. I'm just kidding. No, it's not. But it is what separates the wealthy from the rest of us. It is a silent and quiet secret that everybody should know about. And you want to learn more? You're going to have to check the video out. One of the most important things a lot of people need to understand is what separates, folks that are struggling paycheck to paycheck, in debt, and, just not where they want to be financially, to the people that are where they want to be, the wealthy. What is the biggest difference? And I read and listen to a lot of Earl Nightingale and Napoleon Hill, and there's a commonality across the board as to what that difference is, and it comes down to compound interest. That is it. These wealthy individuals that you hear about, like the Warren Buffetts of the world, the one thing they've done that we haven't is they've had time, they've been persistent and consistent, and they've been compounding their investments, compounding the growth. And I had a really unique way to show this. And we always talk about the infinite banking concept, and that is the main thing we teach, and it's a process, folks. The infinite banking concept is not a product. Today, we're going to focus heavily on the product, the machine, as we like to call it, that runs the infinite banking concept. But the infinite banking concept is just a process of taking back the banking function in your life. The easiest way to say that is we go out and we work for money. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of this fake money here. We go out and we work for this stuff. We trade our time for this, and all of us have a different amount that we get paid per hour. And some of us have gotten to a point where we determine how much we're worth per hour. And that is easy to see. So a lot of times, how you're going to see this in this evolution. And Christy, I know you've been there. I know I went through this, but when I was living paycheck to paycheck in debt, I never would have thought this way. I mowed my lawn. I did every single thing myself. And when someone, you'd see people getting their lawn mowed. You'd see people getting their landscaping done. You'd see people doing all these little things. You're like, why wouldn't they just do that themselves? And the simple answer that everybody will determine and come up with is they've put a value to their dollar. And it's cheaper for them to hire something like that out so that they get that time back. And that's freedom, folks. Because listen, we put so much emphasis on money. Money's just a tool. And the only thing money should be doing for you is buying back your time and giving you freedom. That's it. Freedom with your kids, freedom to go out and enjoy life, freedom to do the things you want. But there's a big disconnect from what we've been taught. See, in order to have freedom, you can't be valuing your time and using your time to make money. I know we have to, so let me be clear about this. What has to happen is there has to be a slow changeover from working for money to your money working for you. Let me repeat that. There has to be a change sometime in your life. It's a mental shift first, and then it's a physical shift second. And that is where we value our time enough to realize that if all we do is work for money, we can never get ahead. But once we start having our money work for us, that buys us back that time, because your money doesn't sleep, it doesn't take vacations, it doesn't need to eat, it just will do what you tell it to do. And this is commonly called compound interest. So my $389 a month secret is none other than one of the early whole life policies that I set up when it was in 2008. If everybody remembers 2008, that was the Great Recession. But I set this policy up right before the Great Recession hit, because it took place later in that year. I was a financial advisor, and back then, I was making okay money, but I was buried in debt. I always was, I'd make money and I'd spend it. I'd make it, I'd spend it. I'd make it, I'd go out and buy something new. Even though I was an advisor, I wasn't a good steward of money, and that's the big difference. So when I started this policy, I decided I was going to put $389 a month into a whole life policy. Now, let me preface, and Christy, this will mean something more to you than it will most of your audience. This policy we're going to discuss today, this whole life policy, is nothing special. It is an off-the-shelf, normal base whole life policy from the company I was working with, New York Life. That's who I was a financial advisor with. And I was putting $309.06 into it. So a lot of times people are like, oh, hey, Chris, how come you always do these videos with 10,000 and 25,000 and 50? Great. I just figured I'd do a video today with $389 a month and show you what this thing can do. And the only reason you're going to see the numbers you are today is because of time and compounding interest. Now, compound interest is a unique thing. Earl Nightingale talks a lot about it, and so does Albert Einstein, and you all know him to be a mathematician. He said it was the eighth wonder of the world, the most powerful thing in the universe. That's what Albert Einstein called compound interest. But it's compounding of anything that's powerful, but compounding of money is extraordinarily special because how it works is at first it's very slow, and then it starts going faster and faster and faster. It's like it's a curve, right? If you've ever seen those curves, that's like, wow, I want that stock. You want that growth. Well, you can have that growth even in a guaranteed vehicle like this whole life policy that we're going to get into. And then today, I'm not going to spend much time on the process called the infinite banking concept, but I want you to understand that this machine, this whole life policy we're going to go into, this is what you would use or something like this to fund your infinite banking concepts, your process of being your own bank. But I would never, ever design a policy the way that I did this one today, because this is not specially designed and engineered. The policies we do today for the infinite banking concept, make no two ways about it, they are very different than the one I'm going to show you. And the reason I want to show this is because over time, all whole life policies have tremendous returns, and it's because of compounding interest. And some of you may not even understand compounding. So let me just kind of give you the simplest thing. It's interest being paid on top of interest, and then over and over that goes. So let's just say it this way, you put let's say $4,400 is about what this works out to be per year. If I put $4,400 into this policy and it's earning a guaranteed interest and dividends, let's call it 5.5%. I think today New York Life pays 6.2, but back then it wasn't. So let's just say 6%. Let's keep it simple, right? It was making 6%. At first, I barely made any interest in that first year on that 4,400. So it was just a little bit, but if I put 4,400 in, and let's just say I made a couple bucks in interest, now I'm getting interest on not just the 4,400 I put in, but also the interest. The next year, I earn interest on top of the interest that was already paid to me, and now that's compounding. And as this goes on, it goes faster and faster. But actually, let me not really explain that. I want all of you to know something, and I want you to know that what we're going to go off of, these numbers, are right off my statements. Here they are. Here are my statements. This is 2024 statement, 2023's, 2022's, and I've got them all. Matter of fact, Christy, I went in. This thing's old. It's probably, paper when it gets old, got that smell. 2008, this is my original illustration with all my original numbers. So folks, when I'm going to show you these numbers, these aren't made up numbers. These aren't hypothetical numbers. This is my policy. I started it June 1st, 2008, which makes it just about 17 years old. Almost, I would say, we're on our way to the 18th year. And behind me, if you could focus on these numbers, I'm going to read them out to you. I want to walk you through the numbers. Remember, this is a small policy. A normal off-the-shelf whole life policy, nothing like the specially designed ones that we design today. So here's the downside to this policy that I started. In the first year, when I put $4,400 in, $389 and times 12, it says it's $4,407.50. If some of you add that up, you're going to be like, no, it's different. Well, it is, because if you pay annually, it's one amount. If you pay monthly, it's another. So let's not get caught up in a couple cents here. So $389.05, I fund this monthly. $4,407 that went in that first year. How much money, Christy, do you think I had in cash value that first year in this old whole life policy?
Probably 60%.
Zero.
Really? Oh,
I had zero cash value in the first year. In the second year, I hardly had any, but here, I'll actually tell you, in the second year of this policy, I would have had, or actually, sorry, this is an in-force policy, so I don't have it going back to the first year. My mistake. Yeah, this is not my original policy. This is my in-force, so I don't have the original numbers. But the second year would have been close to zero, and the third year would have been just slightly more than zero. Now, that wouldn't make most people happy, right, Christy? If you put $4,400 into something, you had $0 to use of that $4,400, would you be happy?
No.
No. But see, when I set this up, I set it up for the death benefit, which was $250,000 in death benefit. That's how much money this policy had in the first year. But see, the new policy, the policies we design today that Christy and I do for our clients to use with the infinite banking concept. Now, Christy, if we specially designed a policy today, how much cash value would there be in the first year for the client to use, or in the first 30 days?
Probably over 80%.
Correct. Between 60 and 90%, depending on age, health, and a couple other factors. So I always give a range, but it's probably closer to that 80+% range. So you're absolutely correct. So you can see the biggest difference with the old policy that I did back then and the new ones that we specially design and engineer is the access to your capital and how fast you have access. The new ones are far better. This old one was not good at all. But let's go into how this has worked out for me over the period of time. Remember, it's not a lot of money. $389, $4,400 a year. Okay. So in 2023 over here, I had a cash value of $81,976.38. Now, that's 17 years of putting that money in. I'm going to talk about returns down at the bottom, but I made good money on this in 17 years just by sheer math, right? And that's because of compounding interest. But see, my death benefit is $283 or $283,140. That was in 2003, folks. So you can see my death benefits going up as my cash value is going up. And I'm going to come back to the cash value in a second. The dividend in 2023 was $1,472.98, and the growth over the prior year. So what I mean by this is, I mean, if I put $4,407 in 2022, so from 2022 to 2023, my growth, how much interest and dividends I earned with compounding, was $7,615.48. Now, Christy, imagine you had $4,407 or $389 a month, and you put it into a bank account. And at the end of the year, you go back to that bank and you get your balance, and the teller tells you that you have $7,615.48. But you're thinking to yourself, oh, there must be a mistake. I only put $4,407.50 in. How can I have $7,615.48 at the end of the year? Well, you wouldn't in a bank account. But because of this policy, I've been earning compounding interest every year since 2008. That is a massive growth. That's actually 63%, 63.11% cash on cash return. So if you put $4,407 into an investment, and this is not an investment, folks, this is just a stupid whole life policy. But if you put $4,407 into an investment, I don't care what investment you put it into, it would have had to have grown 63.11% in order to have the growth that I had in this policy. Hopefully that sets in. And my cumulative return, which is over the period of time, which not 17, 16, 15 years, at that point, I have made 17.05%. That's my cumulative return I made on that. So it doesn't matter how we run the math, folks. Cumulative or cash on cash, that's pretty good. But let me go back to the cash value. How many of you think you could find a home for $81,976? Well, I could. I could buy a car, right? A nice car for that. I could pay off debt, which would be the smartest possible thing you could do with that. I could invest that money if I had no debt and didn't need a car or something else. So you can see the access to that capital gives me the ability and the freedom, back to that word freedom, to do the things I want. But now let's get into what I really refer to as the exciting stuff and freedom making, okay? My secret $389 a month. Let's go 1 year past. So from 2023 to 2024, my cash value went from $81,000 to over $90,000. That's $90,408. My death benefit, should I die prematurely, goes from $283 to $287. Modest growth, but it's still going the right direction. My dividend went from $1,400 to $1,710.62. This is where it gets real fun. I didn't change anything, folks. I didn't do anything different with this policy. And I want all of you to know, because some of you have watched our videos before, and we're always talking about taking loans from the policies and sending that money out to work. What I'm showing you is doing nothing with the cash value. I am just leaving it in the policy. This is just growth of the policy, okay? So my growth this year from 2023 to 2024 was $8,063. That's an 82.9% return, cash on cash. My cumulative return, remember the year before, was 17.05. Remember, I know I'm saying things twice, but I'm letting these sink in. Cumulative return would be from day one, June 1st, 2008, up to June 1st, 2024, that all the premiums that I've put in that entire time, minus the cash value, and then you do some division, my cumulative return was 28.2. So in 1 year, because of compounding interest, that's all this is compounding. My cash on cash return went from 63 to 82, and my cumulative return went from 17.05 to 28.2. Do I have your attention now? This is an off-the-shelf whole life, folks. Not one of the good ones that we design today that are specially designed and engineered. But see, this is what Albert Einstein, this is what Warren Buffett, this is what Napoleon Hill, this is what they all understood, because they all were around wealthy individuals that they learned from. Folks, in life, we have to pick and choose who we're going to learn from. And we have to make sure that we pick the right people to show us the path to wherever we want to go. Now, listen, money might not be your thing. You might actually think money is evil, but money is nothing more than a tool. That's all it is. Just like the shovel in your garage, that shovel was built for a purpose. Just like money, money has a purpose and it's different for everybody. Yes, could it be used for evil? Absolutely. But in your life, it probably is, and it's used for good. But all I want to discuss is using it to buy back your time. Let's go one more year. 2025, this is where we're at now. Actually, this is the 2025 statement, okay, right here. So let's go into it. I went from 90,000 in cash value to 99,436. My death benefit went from 287 to 293,101. My dividend, just the dividend that the mutually owned insurance company pays me, $17.10, but it went to $2,030. You see how fast this is starting to go, folks? See how it's getting bigger and bigger every year. And I'm doing nothing different. I'm not working harder. I'm not working overtime. I'm not taking on any risk at all. This is all guaranteed growth except for the dividend. But the dividend, you can see, just keeps going up. And this company, like all the companies we deal with, have paid dividends each and every single year since they've been open. And we don't deal with an insurance company that has less than 140 plus years in existence. They've never missed a dividend, never, not once. That's not through the Great Depression, not through any of the wars, not through the Great Recession, not through COVID. They never, ever missed a dividend. Matter of fact, the dividend here just keeps going up, okay? My growth, remember the prior year was 8,000, now it's 85.98. That's a 95% cash on cash. My cumulative return jumped to 32%. Let's do two more really quick. 2026, into the future. What's this thing going to do? Because we can run these into the future because remember, they're based on guaranteed interest. So my cash value will jump to 109 from 99. That's you can see the growth there. It's over $9,000 in growth. My death benefit's now $298. My dividend goes up to $2267. That's a $95.63. So $9,563. I put $4,407 in, and I could take $9,563 out that year. That's the growth just in that year. That's 116.9%, folks. 63% to 82. 82 to 95, 95 to 116. Where's it going to be in 2027? Well, my cash value goes to 119, 130. My death benefit's over 305,000 now. My dividend is at 25.14. That's a big increase just in 1 year. Compounding interest, folks. 10,130 is the amount my $4,407 in premium grew that year alone. That's 129.8% cash on cash return. My cumulative return at that point will be 42%.
Wow.
Folks, I'm just showing you this to help you understand that compound interest is the difference between where someone's at today that they're not happy with, they're not financially where they want to be, to where they want to be. It's compound interest, but you can't get there, folks, if you don't have your mindset. So let me add one more thing, Christy. I think this is one of the big things. Society will steer you wrong almost 100% of the time. Christy will not, I will not, but society will, because society will make you think you got to keep spending every dollar. There's actually, I call it a disease, but there's actually names for it. When you get a raise, okay, at work, don't you spend it? All of a sudden, it doesn't feel like you got to raise it. After a year, it feels like the same as it was before. When you get a big bonus, a lot of people literally spend their bonus before they even get it. You see, all of those habits that we've been taught to live up to our means, to spend every dollar, to take on debt, Listen, you probably wouldn't be watching this if you don't have debt. Okay. All of us have been through that debt cycle. Some of us, and I hope all of you in the future, have gotten out of the debt cycle. Christy, I know you don't have any debt. The only debt I have right now is the mortgage, which I'm using Velocity Banking to pay off my mortgage. Outside of that, every one of my cars, everything else I own is owned through my own private banking system, funded with these. Because here's the one thing I'm going to wrap with, folks, on this one, because I just wanted to show you this, my $389 a month secret. Now let's go one step further. I know a lot of you don't want to wait 17 years to have your numbers look like this. But here's what I want to preface. Do you think I waited for that money to get to this point? Christy already knows the answer. Absolutely not. Folks, I have been using this cash value every year since I had cash value. I'll tell you this. In 2008, during the Great Recession, I was broke, almost bankrupt. But in 2009, I started buying real estate. Do you want to know what I was doing with the cash value in this policy in 2009? I was taking loans from my policy to fund rehabs on apartment buildings I was buying. And then when the apartment was rented and cash flowing, I was repaying the policy loans. Over and over, I did this. But you see, and you see by the numbers, I'm giving them to you right here, and I'm happy to show these closer if you want. My compounding never stopped. Now, this is hard for some people to understand. And here's how I want to say it. Let's say in 2023, I needed $80,000 to buy an investment property. I had a great buy on a single family house that I was going to rent out for $2,000 a month, right? That's my purchase. And I needed $80,000 to buy it. I can take $80,000 from this policy as a policy loan. Now, here's what New York Life, the insurance company, would do if I did that. New York Life would not ask me any questions outside of what bank account do I want it to go to? Is this part of a divorce decree? And is this fraudulent or something like that? There's like 4 questions they'll ask you, all basic, nothing like going to a bank. You go into a bank and you want to take $80,000 from your bank. Hold on, let me have some of you try to tell me what the bank's going to do. What do you need it for? Well, we don't have that here. You're going to have to come back. You're going to have to call this number. You're going to, folks, I'm not kidding you. Most banks don't have $80,000 to give you. The insurance company has the money. So if I want my money to buy that rental and I need 80 grand, I go in, I answer those 4 questions online and I click submit. Within 36 hours, $80,000 hits my bank account. Then I close on that rental. But hold on, what actually happened? Did the money come out of my account? I had $81,976, which remember that $81,976 is what's compounding to give you all those numbers that I just read off the screen. But I just took $80,000. How much is left in my account? Some of you are thinking this is a trick question, but you're still saying, well, if you had $81,976.38 and you took 80, this is not complicated math, Chris, you have $1,976.38 left, right? Wrong. I still have $81,976.38 compounding uninterrupted because the insurance company didn't use my money to give it to me. The insurance company loaned me money from their general account. And what they did is they just came over here to my death benefit and they subtracted $80,000 from my death benefit. This is just a ledger, right? They're just doing these numbers on a computer. So now if I died the next day, my family would not get $283,140. They would get $203,140 because the $80,000 was given to me while I'm living. You see, the insurance company just advanced me part of my death benefit while I'm living. Now, here's the thing. The insurance company does charge interest when they give that money to us. Now, I can only give you today's numbers. So I called New York Life recently and I said, hey, what is your loan interest rate? The amount that the insurance company will charge me to borrow my money, my death benefit. Okay. How much do you think it was? Hold on. I'll just tell you because you'd get it wrong because you'd be thinking banks. 5.85% is their loan interest rate today. How much does New York Life pay in their dividend crediting rate, which is their interest plus dividend? 6.2, if I'm not mistaken. You can Google that. Google New York Life's dividend crediting rate. And yeah, I think it's 6.2%. So hold on a second. They're paying me 6.2% on the full $81,976. And they're charging me 5.85% to borrow my own money. But my money never leaves the account because they just give me part of my death benefit. Does everybody understand how banking works? You give a bank money. You worked hard for this money. You all either direct deposit or you walk it and you put it into the bank account. And you get excited. Now, how many of you get interest on your bank account? Great. Put that down in the comment. Put what you make. Maybe somebody will be making 4%. So if you're making 4% on your bank account, and let's just say you found a bank that would lend money, or let's just say that particular bank that's paying you 4% on your money would lend you money at 3. Would you take the money out of the bank account that's earning 4, or would you take the loan at 3? Now, probably 99.9% of you would take the loan at 3 because you're like, well, I'm making 4 and they're only charging me 3. I'm making a 1% spread. See, I'm tricking you, folks. I'm tricking you. Isn't that exactly what I'm doing here? Remember, if New York Life pays me 6.2 dividend crediting rate, and I'm not saying New York Life is a good company for what we do. Matter of fact, I would never use New York Life for the infinite banking. I'm just saying this is what my policy is. They pay me 6.2 and I can use the money at 5.85. Isn't that the same example? How does a bank use the money? The bank pays you 4. They never lend the money back to you at 3. They lend the money to you at like 6, 7, 8, 9, and up, right? They make a spread. Isn't that what I just showed you how to do? I just tricked you into it. That's what we do every day. That's what the infinite banking concept allows us to do. We use the money to go make a higher interest rate on the money, or to make a higher return on the money than what our cost of capital is. So if I'm making 6.2 and I'm paying 5.85, does it matter? Nope. But then I buy a rental property. Let's say I make 6% on the rental property. I'm not making 6 anymore, folks. I'm making 6 on the rental property plus the spread on the policy. But how much was the spread? I tricked you again. I said 6.2 minus 5.85. You all thought that was the spread, but I already gave it to you. In 2023, my cash on cash return, the amount I made on that $4,400 I put in, was 63%. So wouldn't that be the way to figure the spread out? 63.11 minus 5.85. Or some of you would be like, no, you got to do the cumulative. No, that's wrong, but still, 17.05 minus 5.85. Who's not taking that deal? Every one of you, 100% of you would do that. This is the only vehicle that there is that in existence that allows you to do what we just explained. You see, the entire time I've had this policy, from the time when I had cash value, which again, I didn't have much cash value in the first couple of years, but in 2009 I did. I've been using the cash value. However, I've been using the cash value to make money a second time because I never stopped making money here. Otherwise, these numbers wouldn't look this way. Otherwise, we wouldn't be looking at statements that reflect exactly the numbers on the screen. You see, compound interest does provide freedom, but compound interest no longer requires you waiting 15, 16, 17 years before you start compounding at a level that actually allows you to buy back your time. I've been buying back my time the entire time I've had this policy, not just now. That's all I wanted you to understand today, folks. I just wanted you to see something, real numbers from a real policy, not even a good policy. But there is no bad whole life policy. It's just a matter of how much time do you want to wait till you actually have cash value to use to make your life better. Christy, anything you want to add to that?
Every time I hear you talk, you make such good sense. And it's common sense when you run the math. It's amazing. And, I think my number one question that I hear from people a lot is, well, how much do I have to start? And when you're using the $389 a month, they're thinking so much higher than that. So if you were to put $389 with one that is specifically designed, specially designed and engineered to do this, I mean, you can make great progress with that. So it doesn't take a lot of money to get these things rolling. I think that it is such almost a system setup that people don't understand the whole life and how it works. And they're making the suggestions that you go, buy stocks, whatever. And when this obviously is your best way to build wealth, it's amazing.
Well, it's funny too, Christy, because when I first came up with this idea to kind of do this video about this policy, I said, all right, well, what would this have looked like if I actually did a specially designed and engineered whole life? So we actually did one right here. So here's the things that were different. The first year, I put $4,407 in, just like this. I rolled my age back to how old I was when I started this, which was 29, almost 30. So I ran it at 30 years old because my birthday is July 28th. And how much cash value did I have in the first year? Almost identical to what you said, Christy, 80%. I had 80%. I had almost $3,600 of the $4,400 to use in this specially designed and engineered policy versus my old policy, this one here that I started in '08, which is the off-the-shelf whole life. I had zero cash value to use. So that's the biggest difference. And there's one other difference, and some of you may not like this. If you remember, I said this policy when I first started it in '08 had a death benefit of $250,000. Matter of fact, you don't need to take my word for it. It's right there. It says face amount, if you can see that, $250,000. Well, this policy that's specially designed and engineered, there's a trade-off. And we must understand that trade-off because there's no secret here. It's not hocus pocus. It's not some magic trick that we do. When we design these policies, the specially designed and engineered ones, like the one I just talked about, what has to happen is we have to build it for high early cash value. Hence, I put $4,400 in. I have $3,600 I can use. What's the trade-off? What did I give up? Because some of you are like, oh, what's the catch? Here's the catch. The death benefit on this policy was only $111,107 versus $250,000. But you know what else happens when that happens? And this is something not a lot of people know. Because the policy was designed and engineered for high early cash value, it required, well, we build it with a lower death benefit, which means the client has less cost because the cost in a whole life policy is from the death benefit. You're paying for the cost of insurance. But the death benefit also drives the commission. So this policy that I started for myself in '08, the commission was significantly higher. Matter of fact, about 80% higher than the commission on this new one because the death benefit is what the commission's derived from. And if we go from 250 down to 111,000, you can do the math, but that results in a much lower commission. So when we design policies for our clients, folks, we design them just like the one I showed you here, not the one I talked about, not my old policy, not a base whole life, a specially designed and engineered, which requires us to take a reduction in our commission of anywhere between 60 as much as 90% less commission. There is no secret, folks. Someone's got to give so somebody else gets. That's the secret to life, really, if you really want the answers. Somebody else has got to give so somebody else gets. The giver mindset.
You're right.
There we go.
You are right. You are right. Well, thank you so much for that. So many people are so interested in what the infinite banking concept is, what it looks like, and you just laid it out. I mean, people, it doesn't get any more clear than what he said. It's just math. It's just math, and compound interest is what makes the difference. Chris, until I started working with you, I didn't understand exactly how the whole life worked and why it worked. I certainly didn't even understand things like paying back the loans. I'll hear that a lot. People will say, "Well, yeah, but when did he pay back the loan?" The idea is that that's one of the last things that you do is pay back the loan. You can use that money, then pay yourself back. And I can't even think of anything better, even a line of credit that we use. And I think that was the biggest eye opener for me is the day I said to you, why would you even pay a loan back? That doesn't even make any sense. And you said, why wouldn't you? You're going to be able to use it again. And I'm like, that's not a loan, that's a line.
Exactly what you
That's
teach every day with the HELOCs.
Yeah, a revolving line of credit. And I think that when I heard you say that, I have been on fire with my own, not just, the people I work with. So, guys, that means that if you take an $80,000 loan off of your policy, if you take a $2,000 loan, when you pay that back, if it's in $500 payments, you're going to have that $500 available to you to draw again within 30 days. And that changed the game for me because I was like, oh, now we've got a line. This isn't a loan.
I had a ton of fun with Christy on this video, going over one of my old policies from 2008 and showing how that uninterrupted compounding interest is a game changer and how it allows you to buy back your time, and that is the ultimate freedom. But you know what else is free? This video right here. You're gonna love it. It's called Secrets of the Wealthy. You wanna learn about the infinite banking concepts? That's the one. See you next time.